I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all of our worship, including this Aza of Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate the souls of our marhumin and marhumat, as well as the shuhada of Millat Ja'fariyah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase in our taqwa. We ask Allah to increase in our iman and in our rizq. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten in the reappearance of our holy Imam Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the shafa'at of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, as well as the ziyarah of Imam al-Hujjah al-Qa'im alayhi salam, for the acceptance of this dua. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, Azzamallahu wujurana wa wujurakum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase the reward of the azad that we carry for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam in our hearts. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the nearness of him through the dhikr of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. When it comes to the sermons that have been presented by the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, it indeed showcases the peak of eloquence, and they are extremely meaningful, of course, because they themselves are the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are the ones that will explain to us what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means when He sends a message to us. When it comes to the khutbahs or the sermons after the tragedy in Karbala, you'll find that two khutbah of Sayyida Zainab Salamullah alayha, two sermons of her actually stands out. Even though when you look at all the khutbahs that the lady herself gave, was two in Kufa and two in Sham. Meaning one in the market of Kufa and one in the courtyard of Ibn Ziyad, and then also in the market and the bazaar of Sham and in the courtyard of Yazid himself. Likewise, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam gives a khutbah that becomes famous in Kufa, but also one in Sham. Inshallah, the khutbah that was given by the Imam alayhi salam in Sham will be presented at Imran Bhai's house inshallah tomorrow. But the khutbah that the Imam alayhi salam gives in Kufa is what I want to present today, and inshallah we can learn from. After the tragedy and the martyrdom of all Imam Hussein alayhi salam's family members, his companions, as well as the Imam alayhi salam himself, as per the commandment or the command of Ibn Ziyad himself, the heads were placed on the spears, and the captives were placed right behind those spears, and they were taken towards Kufa. Ibn Ziyad, although I understand that this khutbah is basically based upon the musibah of the Muhammad and al Muhammad indeed, but it is important to understand what the message Imam alayhi salam was given to the Kufans and what we can apply in our daily lives today. So when the Imam alayhi salam finally reaches the courtyard of Ibn Ziyad, the Imam alayhi salam starts with the hamd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thana, meaning he starts by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, Uskutu. Now this narrator of this narration is the same narrator that also narrated the khutbah of Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha. So this Huzaym, he says that I saw the Imam alayhi salam point towards people, not even say anything. He pointed and he told people to be quiet through a hand gesture. Now this hand gesture is not an ordinary person. This wasn't an ordinary hand. This is the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when he points, everybody becomes silent. Not only that, even the rings in the necks of the animals stopped ringing and became silent too. And the narration says, قائما فحمد الله وأثنى عليه وذكر النبي بما هو أهل فصلى عليه ثم قال. The Imam alayhi salam praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he moved on and he mentioned his holy grandfather Rasulullah. And after that he says, Ya ayyuhan nas, man arafani faqad arafani. For those of you that know me, they indeed know me. And why is the Imam alayhi salam saying that? Because you'll notice that in the khutbah of Sham, this is not how the Imam alayhi salam is speaking. The Imam alayhi salam is merely just starting with his khutbah without, almost bringing people's attention to the fact that I know you know me. Why do they know him? Because this is the place where 20 years ago Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam has his caliphate. And because he had his caliphate in Kufa, he knew that the Kufans knew who the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam were and who Imam Sajjad alayhi salam is. And therefore he says, for those of you who know me, they know me, and those that don't know me, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْرِفْنِي فَأَنَا أُعَرِّفُ بِنَفْسِي, then I will introduce myself. And the Imam alayhi salam says, أَنَا عَلِيُّ بْنُ الْحُسَيْنُ بْنُ علي ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I am Ali, the son of Hussein, the son of Ali, the son of Abu Talib. And then he says, أنا ابن المذبوح بشط الفرات من غير ذحل ولا ترات. أنا ابن من انتهكت حريمه وسلب نعيمه. I am the one who is the son of the person who was slaughtered innocently on the river of Furat. And then the Imam alayhi salam says, I am the son of that person, وَحَرِيمُهُ وَإِنْتُهِكَتْ حَرِيمُهُ, and I am that person who is the son of who? Yani Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who was disrespected in Karbala by you people. And then the Imam alayhi salam says, وَسُلِبَ نَعِيمُهُ, and not only that, all the bounties and his properties were taken of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and the Imam alayhi salam. And that's why when the Imam alayhi salam on the 10th of Ashur tells his sister to give him a piece of cloth or clothing that's old, the Imam alayhi salam had already mentioned that to his sister and said that, look, one time today, will come at a specific time, people will come and they will steal whatever I own. I wish that a sister like you, when she comes upon my corpse, I should have something on my body. And that's why Imam Hussein alayhi salam has now asked for the same clothing that indeed Syed Az-Zahra herself had sewn for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And then the Imam alayhi salam continues and he says, أَنَبْدُ مَنْ قُتِلَ صَبْرًا وَكَفَى بِذَلِكَ فَخْرًا. The Imam alayhi salam says, O the people of Kufa, I am the son of that person who was not only killed, he wasn't only martyred, but you found him in the state of sabr. My father was killed and you wouldn't have seen patience being showcased the way my father showcased it in Karbala, even though he went through so many trials and tribulations and hardships. And that's why Imam Hussein alayhi salam becomes the manifestation of that sabr that is ideal, that me and you can learn from. And the Imam alayhi salam, upon knowing that whoever was going to enter the battlefield is going to be either severely injured or he is going to be martyred, and most of them were going to be shuhada, so the Imam alayhi salam chooses not to go himself first. It's easier to sacrifice yourself, but when you know that my children are going to be sacrificed, my children are going to be martyred, my brothers are going to be martyred, then it becomes a little bit easier to leave this world before them, because that hardship is something that becomes unbearable. And the Imam alayhi salam is pointing towards that. He says, no, you don't understand. Man qutila wa kana lahu sabran fakhra, and the person who gave his life and what? He was patient with it, and that's why he was the last one leaving and sacrificing himself for the sake of Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Imam alayhi salam continues and he says, أيها الناس ناشدتكم الله هل تعلمون أنكم كتبت إلى أبي وخدعتموه وأعطيتموه من أنفسكم الأحد والميثاق والبيع وقاتلتموه وخذلتموه. The Imam alayhi salam says, was it not you, all the people of Kufa? And if you notice over here, the Imam alayhi salam, the tone that he uses, the words that he's using is of rebuke. The Imam alayhi salam is rebuking them. Sarzanish ho rahi hai. The Imam alayhi salam is telling them, look, I know for a fact that you knew who we were. And not only that, you were the one that promised my father safety and you invited him to Kufa. But now you stand here and you have betrayed my father, and not only have you betrayed my father, know, and you should know that we know you were the people that actually fought my father also, because there were troops of Kufa that also joined the army of Yazid. It wasn't only the troops of Sham, and that's why we see that there was a wing of the Kufans and a wing of the Shamis when it came to the army of Yazid. Now the Imam alayhi salam is saying, I know for a fact that you were the one that gave him his bay'ah. How did they pledge allegiance? How did they give this covenant? It was on the hand of Muslim bin Aqil alayhi salam. Had it been, so the bay'ah for, of Imam Hussein alayhi salam happened on the hand of Muslim. That doesn't mean that this bay'ah was for Muslim. It happened on the hand, meaning he was a representative of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and that's why he says, Inni ba'ithun ilaykum ibna ammi wa akhi wa thiqati. I send to you my ambassador whose name is Muslim, and not only is he Muslim, he is also my cousin, he is my brother, and he is also my trustworthy. We often think about Muslim to be someone, that the Imam alayhi salam just randomly chooses. That's not how it works, even for a country or a government. When they send someone to a specific place in representation of that entity, that organization, that institution, that government, that country, he becomes the reflection upon that country. Whatever he does now reflects back at the country. And that's why we see that when the ambassadors of different countries even have blunders or they make mistakes, then the whole thing will actually have a backlash and it will come right back to that country itself. Over here, Baba, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is saying what? That I trust Muslim bin Aqil. He is my Safir. That means whatever Muslim says, I Hussein have said. And then Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, Huwa thiqati, and Muslim is my trustworthy. Imam al-Hussein comes as the trustworthy entity from Allah, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam's trustworthy friend becomes Muslim bin Aqil himself. So Muslim bin Aqil indeed had a very important role. This wasn't something very lightly. No, this was a responsibility that really carried weight. And now then the Imam alayhi salam says, not only did you pledge allegiance, give your covenant, you wrote a letter to my father and you promised him safety. And not only that, you gave him your mithaq and your bay'ah, وَقَاتَلْتُمُوهُ وَخَذَلْتُمُوهُ. And not only that, وَخَذَلْتَمُوهُ, not only that, you went along and you actually betrayed my father. You betrayed him because you said something and then you did something else. You promised him safety, but you actually became the means of harm towards Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his family himself. And that's why over here the Imam alayhi salam now makes a dua of nifreen, meaning he makes a bad dua for them, and he says, wow upon you, tabban lima qaddamtu li anfusikum wa su'a. And now wow upon you, due to what reason? For that which you yourself have done. Imam alayhi salam, this is something, brothers and sisters, that me and you can take away. That if we choose not to partake on the side, or not to take the side of Allah's representative, then we stand in opposition. Yes, we may have shortcomings and mistakes, but standing, at one point the Kufan were against Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They betrayed Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but that wasn't it though. When they come to Kufa, you see these same people are now crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You see these same people are now, doing matam, and they're lamenting and they're saying, Wa wayla wa Husayna, what have we done to ourselves? Why didn't we stand with you? Do you know what Sayyidah Zainab looked at them and said? She said, now I pray, and now I know that this is something that back in our home country is something that the Sunnis say against us, but it's not entirely far away from the truth, and I will explain. Okay, it's not entirely far away from the truth. Inshallah, I will also give you the difference, and I'm just going to take a minute to clarify this. Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha says, At-tabkuna wa tantahibuna, do you now cry and do you now do matam for him? What is it that this lady is saying? She's saying that when it was the time, you didn't stand with the representative of Allah. When it was time, you didn't stand with the son of Rasulullah. When it was time, you didn't stand with the son of Zahra salamullah alayha. It was for you to take a stance. You didn't take that stance. Now you have no right to cry upon Hussein alayhi salam. You have no right to do matam upon him. And now Sayyidah Zainab is actually turning those words, and she's actually turning their action against them. And she says, and now I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah keeps you crying and Allah keeps you lamenting. But the question is, this is what Sunnis tell us. Khud mara, khud peerte ho. Yeah, that's what the people actually say about it. So where do we go? At one point, Sayyidah Zainab is giving a bad dua. And then you have all the other hadith that say that whoever sheds even a tear for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, فَوَجَبَتْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. Right? Why this, extreme exaggeration, but also this very immense contradiction? Sayyidah Zainab saying, I pray that Allah keeps you crying. But dua de rahi hai. She's giving a bad dua. She says, I honestly hope that Allah keeps you crying. But then why are we crying? And then we have the hadith that say that even shedding one tear for Imam Hussein alayhi salam carries this thawab. And I will explain. What Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayha in Kufa is clarifying and is trying to truly instill within the hearts of humanity or the Muslim ummah ila yawm al-qiyamah is the fact that if you do not stand with the Imam alayhi salam, meaning if you are not actually loyal with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, your tears will mean nothing to us. What does that mean? That means that when it comes to their sayings, when it comes to their commands, when it comes to them leading and guiding us towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I start to pick and choose, then I cry for Imam Hussein looks at me and you and say, you're a hypocrite. You don't actually want to believe in my word, but over here you sit and you cry upon me. And that goes for us, brothers and sisters. Now, I don't know, obviously everybody individually, we are all on our own journey. I'm not in a position to judge, anyone else, and you're not in a position to judge me, right? We all have our journey. But one thing is for certain. If I actually don't want to obey the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, then Sayyidah Zainab is telling me and you will look like a hypocrite the day that you do. If you look at Sayyidah Zainab's burqa and you cry upon the veil of Zainab, but you're actually lacking that yourself, shouldn't you be wondering whether this bad dua is for me? If I am lacking in my praying in something so weird as, something so simple as keeping a beard also, something that you may even consider a little, let's say, controversial to a degree. Is it wajib, is it not wajib? No, what does it cost you to keep a little bit of a beard? As an example, so I need to look in myself, look within myself that, okay, I may have my shortcomings, but am I actually following their footsteps? Now, one thing is to follow their footsteps and try to become like them. Nobody's ever actually expected from you to become like Ali ibn Abi Talib, to become like Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The expectation is to follow their footsteps so that we can become the likes of Salman, so that we can become the likes of Abu Dhar. To the degree that one day Salman was asked, people from the ashab of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam are sitting amongst them each other, and they say that, we often notice that Salman is also always with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. We see Salman with Imam Ali when Ali is at the mosque. We see Salman with Imam Ali when he's in the market. So one day we shall look for Imam Ali where Salman isn't with him. And one day there's a person who finally sees the footprints of one person leaving the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen all the way to the mosque. And he assembles all his friends and he says, now finally the day has come where Ali is alone. The riwayah mentions that they went to the mosque, and when they entered, they saw that Ali was sitting there, but right next to him was Salman. And the riwayah says, Ya Salman, anazalta min as-sama. Salman, oh Salman, did you fall from the skies? Where did you come from? He says, why? He says, because from the house of Ali to the mosque, we only saw one person's footsteps. And Salman turned around and said, but didn't you pay attention to what Rasulullah said? Rasulullah has told you there should only be the footprints of one person. Why? Because you should follow Ali's footsteps. Wherever Ali put his foot down, I, Salman, ulama and myself put the foot upon the footprint of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So, yeah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. मुर्तज़ा भाई टिश्यू नहीं है, कल आप कह रहे थे ना साथ पड़े हुए हैं. सलवात पढ़े मोहम्मद और मोहम्मद. Ya Ali. Ya Ali. So, with utmost humility, I want to remind you of this khutbah again and tell you that there is not a एक दफ़ा और सलवात पढ़े, ऐसे मौजज़े यहीं पर होते हैं. दोबारा सलवात पढ़े मोहम्मद. Anyways, I want to bring your attention towards something that's extremely important. And I know, it may not sound as pleasant to know or to hear that at any point could we be worthy of the bad dua of Sayyidah Zainab, But it is the truth, brothers and sisters. If I am not willing to follow the footsteps of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, then obviously Sayyidah Zainab looked at Imam Sajjad at every turn and she would see the oppression that took place. Why? For the sake of Islam. For the sake of Muslimin following their guidelines. And if we're not actually doing that, and I'm not saying to become perfect, that's not the expectation. But I'm saying at least take your religion serious. At least bring that elevation within you step by step, day by day. Even in small bits and pieces, so that me and you don't become worthy of that bad dua, that now you cry for my brother. Now you cry for him. Because why? Because if you're not actually able to back it up with your actions through the obedience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for himself and for his Rasul and for his awliya, who are the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, then this hypocrisy may take place. And on the day of judgment, Sayyidah Zainab may actually point towards us and say that they knew better but didn't do any better than anyone else. They knew, they heard our message, they came, they cried upon us, but amaliyan, they weren't actually willing to follow. So without picking and choosing, actually following the guidelines of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is important, and that's what the Imam alayhi salam is saying. Let me clarify the other point. If this crying and lamentation doesn't take place, even with small changes or regret, if it doesn't take place, if this azar doesn't carry the aspect of regret of sinning or actually becoming a better person, trust me, we will become worthy of that bad dua. But if we are willing to change, and truly we hope that Imam Hussein alayhi salam will look at us with his sight of mercy on Yawm al-Qiyamah, in that case, now when you cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Allah is willing to give you his Jannah. Allah is willing to give you Jannah. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owes that to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And I believe me when I say this, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the very famous narration that you always hear, that there was a king who went on a journey and got separated from his army and couldn't find his way home, and now he was starving and dying of thirst, and he sees a tent, in it is a goat alongside with an old lady. And this king goes and he requests something to eat and drink, and she says, don't worry, I will give you some milk, and also this is the last goat that I have, I will actually slaughter it for you and I will feed you it. Now this king regains his energy, goes back, finds his soldiers, and now when he is back to his normal life, he suddenly remembered this favor that this lady had done upon him. Now he was a sharif person, he was a ghairatman person, he was a person with honor. So he went back to that lady and he said, oh lady, is there anything that I can do for you, because you clearly saved my life? Can I do something for you? And she says, look, I would have expected something from you had I not done it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't expect anything from you. And he says, look, even if you want my kingdom, I'm willing to give it to you. And she says, no, I don't want anything, leave. Now the soldiers on the way back turn to the king and they say, Your Majesty, why did you offer your kingdom even? It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't have anything left. And he says something beautiful. He says, look, when it was time and I needed something, she gave everything that she had. and therefore I should turn the favor around and I should return it by giving everything that I have. But she didn't want it. So when you have something and you give everything to someone, then in return you should be given everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw on the land of Karbala, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gave everything, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announced that this universe will be my milkiyah, but it will forever be your kingdom. And that's why the Imam alayhi salam reigns upon our hearts. The Imam alayhi salam reign upon our blood, our entity, our wujud and our bodies. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So therefore, brothers and sisters, this crying, if it comes with the ma'rifah of Imam and willingness to actually obey the Imam, then yes, Allah's Jannah become wajib upon me and you. But if it's just merely because we think we'll feel a little bit better and have a better association with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and I don't say this, I just mention this as a possibility because I'm a firm believer that whoever has a candle lit of Hubb al-Hussein alayhi salam in his heart, sooner or later, inshallah, he will come on the right path. It is the person who actually doesn't even care about Imam Hussein alayhi salam that should be truly worried. Would I ever become muttaqi? Would I ever become practicing? But as long as Hussein lives in your heart, inshallah, there's always a way. But I do want you to pay attention on this. Sayyidah Zainab said, look, if you are not standing with the Imam alayhi salam and obeying him, then your crying won't actually benefit you. And the Imam alayhi salam continues. He says, فَتَبًّا لِمَا قَدَّمْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ سُوءًا. And he says, wow upon you for that which you yourself have done, not anyone else. Do not blame, because what were they saying? They were saying, look, O Hussein, what Allah has done. Look, O Sajjad, what Allah has done to your father. And the Imam alayhi salam is reminding them, no, this is not how it works. Allah has given me and you free will. There is no force in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me and you, organs and body parts through which we make actions and we take actions, but you are the one who is actually deciding to do that. And that's why the Imam alayhi salam says, you yourself have done this, and this evilness comes from your hands and no one else's. لِرَأْيِكُمْ بِأَيَّةِ عَيْنَ تَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لَكُمْ قَتَلْتُمْ عِتْرَتِي وَإِنْ تُهِكَتْ حُرْمَتِي فَلَسْتُمْ مِنْ أُمَّتِي. And what will happen the day where you face Rasulullah? And he will turn to you and say, you killed my progeny for no reason. You killed my Hussein alayhi salam whilst he was thirsty. You killed my Hussein alayhi salam innocently. And the Imam alayhi salam says, then Rasulullah will say, and not only that, you actually damaged my honor. And Rasulullah will say, فَلَسْتُم مِّنْ أُمَّتِي. I actually don't allow you to become my ummati. You're not from my nation. You are from the nation of Shaitan himself. قال الراوي فارتفعت أصوات الناس من كل ناحية ويقول بعضهم لبعض هلكتم ولا تعلمون. And the riwayah mentions that people started to raise their voices from every angle of the courtyard, and people said to each other, halaktum walat wama ta'lamun. He says, we have now devastated ourselves and we've destroyed ourselves and we didn't even realize this. This is the mu'jiza of the kalam of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, that even up until that point where people hadn't realized what they had done, at this point the Imam alayhi salam has now made them realize, look, what you have done has caused the destruction of your dunya and your akhirah. And then the Imam alayhi salam says, rahimallahu imra'an قبل نصيحتي وحفظ وصيتي في الله وفي رسوله وأهل البيت فإن لنا في رسول الله أسوة حسنة. And Imam Sajjad alayhi salam recites an ayah from the Holy Quran where he says that, did you forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descended his holy prophet so that he could become, your uswa hasana, your role model. And then فقالوا بأجمعهم نحن كلنا يا ابن رسول الله سامعون مطيعون حافظون لذمامك. And then later on the people turn, because now at this point people have regret. So now they turn to the Imam alayhi salam and they say that, oh Imam, we are under your reign. Oh Imam, we will follow you. You will find us not to disobey disobey you. We will forever obey you now. And now, of course, this regret is taking over their hearts. Now they're also crying and they are lamenting and doing matam. فَإِنَّ حَرْبٌ لِحَرْبِكُمْ وَسِلْمٌ لِسِلْمِكُمْ لَنَأْخُذَنَّ يَزِيدَ وَنَبْرَأُ مِمَّنْ ظَلَمَكَ وَظَلَمَنَا. And then they say that we are with you in peace and in war, O Imam, and we will also stand against Yazid. فَقَالَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ هَيْهَاتْ هَيْهَاتْ أَيُّهَا الْغَدَرَةُ الْمَكَرَةُ. Look, this is the same tone that Sayyidah Zainab has used maybe half an hour prior to that in the market of Kufa. And the Imam alayhi salam says, far from you, far from you. Why? Because I don't believe your words. If your actions have not actually backed up your words, I don't believe them anymore. And I don't expect anything from you. And then the Imam alayhi salam says that you, my people, or the people of Kufa, have not been able to take the desires away from your nufus. It is your desires that took over. It is when the son of Rasulullah called upon you, you chose not to listen to him. You listened to your nafs instead. And not only that, and the Imam alayhi salam mentioned something interesting. And I know that the mu'minat are present here, but the Imam alayhi salam does remind the mu'mineen of something. And he says that when it was time and the son of Rasulullah called upon you, you didn't listen to him. You listened to your nafs, or you listened to your women. You listened to what? Your women or your wealth. Is it such that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have asked us to never listen to our women? That's not the case. That's not the case. In fact, I think, having a life partner, someone that you're married to and the mother of your children, I think that's the least that they deserve. But sometimes, every now and again, or maybe once even in your life, or never, will come a point where you have to do the right thing, even though it looks like it isn't wise. Even though if you're advised against it by even your spouse. And the Imam alayhi salam is reminding me and you that when it comes to the amr of Allah, when it comes to the amr of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, therefore at that time you need to do what is right and you cannot deviate from that. It doesn't matter who is telling you. And over here the word is women. It doesn't necessarily mean wife only. Over here it actually could mean a mother, it could mean a daughter, it doesn't matter. Over here the Imam alayhi salam is saying that you, and as a man, as a wali of the house yourself, need to make the right decision, and that time can come upon you. And that's why the Imam alayhi salam says, no, you chose to listen to the women of your house or your own nafs. Your nafs that was drawing you towards this materialistic world, now I will not believe you. Brothers and sisters, the Imam alayhi salam and Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayhima, and this is the conclusion of this khutbah, two important messages that are present in this, and I won't elaborate further upon the crying bit. Indeed, there is a hypocrisy if we cry for them, but we don't actually want to obey them. Ita'at, if we don't actually want to do ita'at, but I just want to cry for them, that in itself is problematic. But number two is what? That this nafs of ours can take over a qalb salim. It can take over a dhihn and that aql which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us. And when the desires take over your nafs and your aql, then you and I are not able to actually make the right decisions. And that's why in a beautiful hadith, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam states, لَمَّا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ الْعَقْلِ, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this aql. By the way, in some riwayat, aql and nafs have been considered to be the same thing. So consider as nafs or consider it to be aql. Nonetheless, Allah, when He created the intellect, قَالَ لَهُ أَدْبِرْ ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ أَقْبِلْ ثُمَّ أَقْبَلَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it speak, and it told it to move ahead, and it moved ahead, move back, and it moved back. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَعِزَّتِ وَجَلَالِي, I swear by my majesty. I want everybody to pay attention to this. It's extremely important, and this will be the punchline of this speech today. I swear by my majesty that I have not created a creation better than you. What is that? Al-aql. What does an intellect do? The intellect does the processing. It does the thinking. It does this decision making. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therefore continues. And He says something beautiful. He says, وَبِكَ أُعَاقِبْ وَبِكَ أُثِيبْ. Through you I shall punish people, and through you I shall give them reward. What does that mean? Yani, It is that decision making that makes you the man you are. It is the stances that you take in life. It is the knowledge that you acquire and process, and then you draw conclusions from, through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to either punish you and I or reward you and I. Therefore, those people that drew wrong conclusions in Karbala, Allah will indeed punish them. And then you will find the likes of Abis, Joan, and Ali al-Akbar and Qasim, whom about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same hadith says, and Imam Sadiq says, مَا أَكْمَلْتُكَ إِلَّا مَنْ أُعَيِّنُهُ. I will not see you in its complete form unless I have appointed that person. And who is that? That's the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But the more the aql elevates in the right way, and we process things the right way, and we actually at the end make the right decision making, that will become the defining moment, and that will define whether I am worthy of Jannah or worthy of Jahannam. In Karbala, other than the luqma of haram that Imam Hussein alayhi salam said, that you listen to me and you're crying, you feel for me, I don't need your empathy. You're not actually obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is that luqma, it is that bite of haram that's in your stomachs that's not allowing you to listen to me. And not only that, once again, the aql that was either misused or not used at all for decision making, that now takes them and puts them right in front of the gate of hell. And on the other side, you see the likes of who? Abis. Abis in itself may not seem like the most rational person at one point. When he comes to the battlefield and he takes off his armor, he throws away his shield and he says, come, why won't you face me? And somebody turns around and he says, Abis, have you completely lost your mind? And he says, yes. He says, Hubbul Hussein ajannani. He says, the love of Hussein alayhi salam has made me crazy. I have fallen in love with Hussein. I have fallen in love with Jannah. I don't look at Hussein alayhi salam. It's beautiful words of Abis. He says, you think I look at Imam Hussein? This is not Imam Hussein. I look at Jannah when I look at the face of Hussein alayhi salam. Right? So, but this sort of love, this sort of craze, when you actually, find yourself to have, let's say, to fall in love with somebody unconditionally and follow someone blindly. That's what Abis is doing with Imam Hussein. But when? After yaqeen, after making the right decision, after having that ma'rifah. When you have the ma'rifah and now you've made the right decision, it makes you Abis. Therefore, Imam Hussein alayhi salam says that the companions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me, no one else has. My Rasul didn't have them. My grandfather Rasulullah didn't have them. My father Amirul Mu'mineen didn't have them. The companions that I have, no one have. And that's why you'll find the Imam alayhi salam sends a letter to Habib. He sends a letter to Habib. But in this letter, he's saying, Habib, come for my aid. But what sort of aid? Who asks for help from an 80-year-old person? If you're in trouble and you need to fight someone, are you going to ask an 80-year-old person to come fight with you? No. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is allowing he's allowing Habib to get Jannah earlier than anyone else. He doesn't want to keep him away. He doesn't want to keep him deprived of this blessing of Shahada. And that's why Imam Hussein alayhi salam never forced anyone in Karbala. You know, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in Medina, he writes a letter to his own tribe, Bani Hashim. He says, Ya Ma'ashara Bani Hashim, Man lahiqa bi fastashhada. Whoever comes and joins me tomorrow, I'm about to leave on a journey, whoever joins me will either, now he's speaking to the men, so he says, they will either become shaheed or maybe even become a captive. But if you don't come with me, I'm not going to hold you accountable on the day of judgment. Look at the kareem of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Look at the grace that this son of Ali ibn Abi Talib carries. He says, no, don't worry. If you don't join me, I'm not going to hold you accountable. I am radhi, I'm pleased with you. My Allah is pleased with you. Right? But let me tell you one thing. You won't be victorious. You won't be free. Now Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala sold wisdom. Imam alayhi salam sold freedom. Imam Hussein alayhi salam gave us that. And he says, look, at the end of the day, if you want victory, there is something above this sharia. But you will only gain that as long as you stand next to the Ma'soom alayhi salam. Next to the Hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Yawm Ashur. And Shab Ashur. Same thing. The Imam alayhi salam gets the candles blown out. And he says, look, whoever wants to leave, you should leave. And he looks at Joan even. He looks at Joan, he says, Joan, don't stay. I want you to leave. Trust me, everyone, I am pleased with you and my Allah is pleased with you. Don't worry about it. Leave if you can. Because if you're left behind tomorrow, your women will be taken as captives and you will be killed and you will be martyred. Nobody left. Joan comes to the Imam alayhi salam and he says, Oh Mawla, when at ease, meaning at ease times or easy times, I was with you. Now would I leave you when calamity has come upon you? Would I leave you when you're seeing this time of hardship? Joan didn't leave him. Habib himself, when he hears that Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, whoever wants to leave can leave, he now hears the Sayyidah Zainab has become worried. She sends Fidda, go Fidda, and tell my brother not to request people to leave. I am afraid that he will be left alone. Habib ibn Madahir hears this and he assembles all the companions. They come right in front of the khayma of Zainab salamullah alayha and they throw their swords and they say, oh, the daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib, if you do not trust us anymore, here are the swords and here are our necks. This was the belief, this was the iman that these ashab had. There was no loan, and that's why whenever you send your salam upon Hussein, you send your salam upon his companions, and you send your salam upon his awlad, his children, and you send your salam upon Ali ibn al-Hussein. Azadaran, today is the next day or the second majlis in the series of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. I want to, just before I walk into one specific event that takes place in Kufa, I want to mention this Sahabi of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam that's called Habib. And Habib, when he is invited by Imam Hussein alayhi salam to join him in Karbala and he receives this letter, he kisses the letter and his wife notices this honor that he's giving to this piece of paper. And she says, oh Habib, what is it? And he says, oh my dear wife, the son of Zahra has been left alone and has now been surrounded by the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, and they are all there so that they can kill him and he can reach martyrdom. And his wife, like sometimes when I read this narration, it looks like Habib was just preparing his wife, but little did he know that his wife would turn around and say, then Habib, what's stopping you if the son of Zahra is calling upon you? And Habib ibn Madahir goes. He leaves and he sees that he's before that now told his slave that because everybody was being observed in Kufa, he tells his slave to go out, a little out of the city, on the outskirt of Kufa, to wait with his horse. And by the time Habib gets there, because him getting there, his arrival was actually delayed, the slave looks at the horse and he says, oh horse, if our master Habib doesn't come, then you should know that I will mount upon your back and we shall go and aid Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. Habib ibn Mazahir hears this and he starts to cry and he says, oh my Mawla, these slaves were never even invited towards your path, but here I have a slave that's willing to come and aid you in Karbala. Do you know what Habib meant to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? It's interesting. I told you he was 80 years old. Why would Imam Hussein alayhi salam need his physical help? But nonetheless, when Habib gets to Karbala, suddenly all the ashab of Imam Hussein alayhi salam started to chant, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Now Sayyidah Zainab, without realizing that they are chanting the takbir, she hears this shouting of people, and because she was already so worried, she sends Fidda, go Fidda, find out why are people shouting. And Fidda goes and she sees that Habib has arrived. She comes back and she says, oh my lady Zainab, Ya binta Rasulillah, oh the daughter of Rasulullah, your brother's friend Habib has arrived, and that's why people are saying takbirat. And then Sayyidah Zainab says, then quickly go and give her my salam. And this lady Fidda comes and she goes and stands in front of Habib and she says, oh Habib, the daughter of Ali conveys her salam upon you. As soon as he hears that, he started to cry. The narration says that he actually kneeled down and he screamed and he said, has it come down to this, that someone like the daughter of Ali is sending her salams upon me. Ajrukum ala Allah. Azadaran, the last riwayah that I wanted to get to, because it is the ayam of Kufa and Sham and Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. When this Qafila of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the 11th of Muharram, leave Karbala. Now as they're leaving Karbala, the situation has changed. The demographics have changed. At one point when Sayyidah Zainab left Medina, from one side she had Abbas with her. She had Imam al-Hussein with her. She had Qasim with her. She had Ali al-Akbar with her. But now when she's leaving on the 11th of Muharram, things have changed. From one side it is the killer of Imam al-Hussein, and then from the other side the killer of Abbas and Qasim and Ali Akbar. Ajrukum ala Allah. All the heads were put on spears except for one head that was tied to the neck of the horse, and that is the head of Abbas alayhi salam. And the narration mentions two reasons for why. They said whenever they would try to mount the head upon the spear, the head wouldn't stay there. The ulama say why? Because Abbas could see how Zainab was looking today and in what state these ladies were. Ajrukum ala Allah. This qafila gets to Kufa, and this is my last narration. This qafila gets to Kufa, and a person named Qasim ibn Habib. Qasim ibn Habib is the son of Habib. He goes to the person, the soldier who's holding the spear with the head of Habib. He says, "Oh soldier, I want you to return this head to me." He says, "Why?" He says, "Because don't you know, this is my father's head that you are carrying. I want to go and I want to be able to bury it respectfully." He says, "No, I cannot do that." He says, "Why?" He says, "Because I look for reward. I want money." And he says, "Look, I'll pay you. Don't take my father's head to Sham." He says, "No, I have made a promise. I shall take this head with me to Sham." The narration mentions that the next morning, Habib ibn Mazahir's son, whose name is Qasim, alongside his friends in the morning, they come and they pin the soldier down and they take the head of Habib. But Azadaran, what does he do? He puts the head of Habib, meaning his father, in his abba, but he passes by where Sayyid Sajjad is standing, and he says, "Whoever's young son is alive, no one can take his father's head." Imam al-Sajjad looked at the cut head of Abu Abdullah and he says, "Oh father, Qasim is right, but he didn't become arrested. His hands weren't tied in ropes." Ajrukum ala Allah. Azadaran, last narration. Now this qafila, when it comes to Sham, what does Imam Sajjad alayhi salam see? Probably the most difficult that the Imam alayhi salam has ever seen. A person walks into the courtyard, he looks at Yazid and he says, "Ya ayyuhal Khalifa, habli hadhihi al-jariya." Ya Azadaran, he looks towards the daughter of Hussein and he says, "Oh Yazid, why don't you give me this girl in slavery?" Imam Sajjad alayhi salam couldn't bear this. He lifts his head up and he says, "Ya Abdullah, oh the slave of Allah, have you recited ayat innama yuridullah?" He says, "Yes, I have." He says, "Have you recited ayat hal ata?" He says, "Yes, I have." He says, "Have you recited ayat inna atainaka al-kawsar?" He says, "I have." "Yes." But he says, oh prisoner, why do you mention them? Those are the ayat about the Ahlul Bayt." And Imam Sajjad said, "Look at me, I am the son of Hussein, and this girl that you pointed towards is the daughter of Hussein ibn Ali. Ala la'natullahi ala qawm al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا على محمد ينقلب ينقلبون ماتم حسين.